Asatuma Satkamayam Tamasoma Jyotirgamayam Mrityorma Amritam Gamayam Aviravi Vangeti Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. One of the challenges we face in spiritual life if there are any empty seats in the middle, please get in so those who are later can find a place. One of the challenges we face in spiritual life is to distinguish between love and attachment. Once again, one of few of the things that we need to distinguish in life is between love and attachment. We read in our books how raga or attachment becomes a cause for bondage, while viraga, detachment, helps us give freedom. In bhakti scriptures, we read about love of God, the love that God has for us, and the love that we need to have toward God. The problem is, externally, both love and attachment look quite similar, and it's not always easy to distinguish between the two. Oftentimes, even the word love, as it gets used in language, we see that people say, I have fallen in love. The problem is with the verb fallen. And why do people fall in love? We know that when we fall, we are injured, we are hurt. And so it's very interesting how language develops. Love, if it's truly love, we should rise in love. And so it's possible to distinguish between love and attachment in life. Attachment is primarily the attachment towards I, attachment to oneself. And so in any relationship, if I'm primarily thinking of myself first, then that is attachment. And what attachment does is that it tends to make the object of attachment its possession. So everything that I want to make it as mine. In contrast, love is all about you. It's not about oneself at all. Love is what says, I don't mind suffering if the object of my love is happy. The difference between love and attachment becomes even more clear when we see the effect that each produces. Love produces only freedom, joy, contentment. In contrast, attachment produces bondage, fear, anxiety, suspicion. Now what we do find is that in most human relationships, we experience both. We experience joy, or we experience all pain as well. We experience a sense of freedom, we also experience bondage. We experience these mixed emotions because most of human relationships are a combination of love and attachment. So the more we are able to eliminate attachment from our relationships, the greater will our love be. The kind of love that Sri Ramakrishna had, Holy Mother had, Swamiji had, all these great ones, Jesus, Muhammad, all the great prophets and incarnations they had, that was free from any kind of attachment. That is why even today we feel the force, the power of that love. In order to understand how this distinction between love and attachment is lost, it's helpful to take some specific examples. In our tradition, the love that mother has for children is very glorified. We often say that among all relationships, the relationship between a mother and a child is the purest. That there is no comparison other than love for God. There is no comparison among all human relationships between the love that a mother has for her child. But the question can be asked is how much of what a mother sees as my love for my child is really attachment and how much of it is really love. And so I would like to take just two examples to see what attachment masquerading as love, attachment which takes the disguise of love, can cause havoc, can cause so much unhappiness and suffering all around. And in these two examples, therefore, are examples of two mothers. And as you, among the many guesses that you had, so these two mothers, one is from, in fact, Mahabharata, and one is from Ramayana. So let me begin with one mother from the Mahabharata. There is this character of Gandhari, a very, very inspiring character in the Mahabharata. A most venerated character. She is independent, she is chaste, she is straightforward. We know the background. One thing that we know that she was from Afghanistan, what is today Afghanistan, that there was some kind of an arm twisting in the background before this alliance was sealed. I mean, who would want their daughter to marry a blind person? And so Hastinapur was a very powerful kingdom, and when they took this alliance, they wanted Gandhari, the princess of Gandhar, to marry Dhritarashtra. They were not willing, and as I said, there was some kind of an arm twisting, something that happens in the modern world also, between powerful nations and weaker nations. And so finally that alliance was sealed. Now this Gandhari, for whatever the reason, finally that alliance was sealed. She took the brave decision that since my husband is blind, born blind, I choose to remain blind. And so you find this very unusual decision throughout the story of the Mahabharata. You see her blindfolded with her eyes covered. But that was a very brave decision, no doubt. Someone who could see fully, voluntarily choosing to go blind. But in one sense, the entire family was really blind. The father, Dhritarashtra, was born blind. Mother, Gandhari, had chosen to be blind. Duryodhana, the eldest son, was blind by his ambition. All his younger brothers were blind by their unquestioned allegiance and obedience to this very ruthless, unethical eldest brother. And so it was blindness all around in that family. And then we see that when the build-up to the great war in Kurukshetra, Gandhari, who saw everything that was happening. She knew that her children were in the wrong. She often thought Duryodhana and just scolded him, told him to mend his ways, to come on the path of dharma. Nothing worked. No one cared. And so she grieved silently. She knew the eventual outcome, but the only way she could respond was a graceful silence. Now that calm, that inner grieving which she was undergoing, finally came to an end somewhere towards the middle of the war, when one by one these great warriors on the Kaurava side began to die. First to fall was Bhishma, then Drona, Karna and others. And even though Gandhari had known what the eventual outcome would be, when she actually saw that that end was imminent, was very near, her inner calm was broken. And she asked the question to herself, what is my duty as a mother? My child, my beloved child, my son Duryodhana and my other children, they are in mortal danger. The great warriors who are going to support them and protect them, they are dead, and my children are about to die as well. So as a mother, shouldn't I do whatever is possible to protect my children? Isn't that what a mother's love would demand? And therefore she took the brave decision that I will do everything possible in my power to help my son. And she was a great yogi. She led a very pure, ethical life. And as a result of her life of dharma, she had accumulated immense power. And so she then sent word to Duryodhana to come at night to her tent and come completely stark naked. And that she would then remove her blindfold, and with her yogic power, she would make the body of her son strong as flint. Nothing, no arrow could pierce such a body. When Duryodhana got this news, he was overjoyed. He knew that, well, my mother had been scolding me all through life. She never appreciated my hopes, my ambitions. But now my mother is here to protect me. He was very, very happy. Now this news reached the Pandava camp as well, and they were terrified because they knew Gandhari's power. And they knew that if Duryodhana became invincible, then the war wouldn't end in their favor. And as Pandavas often did, when they were in danger, they went to Krishna and asked for his help. After seeing the worried faces of these Pandavas, Krishna said, as we know from Krishna's personality and also from the story, he was least concerned. He said, don't worry, everything is happening the way it should happen. And then we read that as Duryodhana was on the way to his mother's tent, stark naked as his mother had wanted him to be, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, Krishna appears. An obvious natural human reaction was he immediately hid behind a tree. He never expected at that hour of the night anybody would be on the way. And then Krishna told Duryodhana, he said, are you stupid? Is this the way you go and meet your mother? And Duryodhana said, well, that's what my mother wanted me to go to her that way. Krishna said, use your common sense. You're not a baby anymore. Sure, she's your mother, but you're a grown adult person. You never go before a mother that way. So if she said, don't go fully clothed, but at least cover yourself a little bit, at least. And Duryodhana immediately agreed, because that's really, he himself was feeling a bit uncomfortable going that way to see Gandhari. And so then he picked up a banana leaf from a nearby tree, covered himself, and then went ahead. And then we see that he enters Gandhari's tent. She opens her blindfold after years. And that was the first time ever she set her sight on her son. And her heart was filled with joy, filled with love. For the first time she was seeing the face of her son. And such was the power of her eyes that his whole body became strong, firm, invincible, except the portion covered by the banana leaf. Now that's kind of strange, that such a powerful lady, whose yogic power could make his entire body so strong and invincible, that power could not pierce through a very fragile banana leaf. So what is it that blunted that power? And that what blunted that power was the attachment. It was not so much an expression of love, but the attachment that she felt for her son. Then Krishna goes back to the Pandavas and said, now you know exactly. If you wondered, how can we ever kill Duryodhana? Now his mother herself has shown you what his weak point is. And then he orders Bhima to go and strike Duryodhana at that one portion of his body which could not be made firm because it was covered by banana leaf. So, even though wanting to save and protect her son, his mother actually became the cause of exactly telling the enemies how her son should be killed. So that is what attachment does. Even when we think we are acting in self-interest, we are actually acting against our self-interest. So all actions that we do out of attachment, we might think that they are for the good, but their outcome is never really good. Let me take a second example, and that is from the Ramayana. And again, the example of Kaikeyi. Kaikeyi, the youngest of the three queens of Dasharatha, she was young, beautiful, intelligent, brave. Among the three queens, she was the only one who accompanied her husband in battles. And there is a story that in one of the battles, that when he was in mortal danger, she saved his life. And Dasharatha was so happy that he immediately granted her 2 boons. And she was so happy and contented. She said she doesn't need any boons, but she refused to accept them. And Dasharatha said, well, if you don't want it now, you can ask for them later. And that was probably a very bad idea. So, and it is said that in the Ramayana we see that Kaikeyi, she loved Rama. In fact, she had often said, I would like to have a son like Rama. And Rama loved her. So there was all love going all around. And yet, we find that when the decision was made by Dasharatha that Rama would be coronated the king of Ayodhya, the happiest person was Kaikeyi. Everyone in the kingdom was happy also. Everyone loved Rama. And so everyone wanted Rama to be the king. So there was great happiness and rejoicing all around. The inside story also was that Dasharatha took this decision rather suddenly. It wasn't, everyone eventually knew that the eldest son, as the tradition in those days was, would be the king. But the timing was rather suspicious, because he took that decision when Bharata was away at his maternal grandparents' home. And the story is that when Dasharatha fell in love with this young princess Kaikeyi and went and proposed to her parents that he wanted to marry their daughter, they refused, because he already had 2 queens, and they knew that if their daughter married, she would be the youngest, and her son would never be the king. He would be always the oldest son of the oldest queen, according to the tradition of those days. And so they put this condition. They said, we'll agree to give our daughter in marriage to you, provided her son would be the king. And Dasharatha, of course, had fallen in love, and so he immediately agreed. He would have agreed to anything at that point. And that's how the marriage occurred. Now, Dasharatha was a little apprehensive that this promise that he had made years earlier might come in the way. And so he had made sure that Bharata was away, and rather suddenly, before any last minute obstacle comes in the way, to coronate Rama as king. And an obstacle did come, not in the way Dasharatha had anticipated. As we know, I'm not saying anything new, all of you are familiar with this story. The Kaikeyi's maid, Manthara, she goes and poisons her mind and says that you should do something to make sure that your son becomes the king, because if Rama becomes the king, then Kaushalya would be the Rajmata, you would be neglected, no one would care for you, your son would be sidelined. So just everything she said was to make Kaikeyi that I'm really going to suffer. Not just me, my beloved son would be deprived of the right to be the king. Again, a similar kind of a dilemma that came in the mind of Gandhari came in Kaikeyi's mind also, that I'm a mother and my love for my son, I love my son, I want my son to be the king, and I should do everything I can to help my son become the king. And therefore we see that in some versions of Ramayana, she goes and in that room meant for grief or anger, and then when Dasharatha returns home, he sees that his queen is in that room meant for grief or anger. Now, that was actually a very nice tradition. Of course, nowadays we don't have large enough homes to assign one room each for every emotion. The olden days, the kings could do that. But there is some sense in it, there is some reasoning behind it. And that is, first of all, if someone is angry or grieving or upset, and you have some portion of your house assigned for that emotion, then that person can go there and wait. What it does is it lets everyone else in the family know the state of mind of that person. And then you are then able to deal with the person appropriately. Also, you can see sometimes, and this is an experience all of us would have had at some point, time or other, that if there is someone very upset or angry in a family, the whole atmosphere at home changes. It becomes everyone is tense. The whole dynamic changes. So if you can kind of isolate that feeling in just some corner of the home, so as not to pollute the rest of the home with that feelings of anger or something, I think that's a great thing. Anyhow, so that's where Kaikeyi went and stayed. Dasharatha goes there, he asks her what's the matter, and then she says blah 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 blah, and then she said, well, these are the two boons, and I want my first boon, Rama should go to exile in the forest for 14 years, and the second boon, my son Bharat should be the king. Dasharatha is devastated. He had feared that some such thing might happen, but he hadn't imagined that it would really happen. So we see that he just takes to bed, he falls ill, and after a few days he dies. The people of Ayodhya, until that point, they had adored Kaikeyi. As I said, she was brave, she was loved by all. When they heard, and this kind of news spreads very fast, even there was no internet then, there was no Twitter, no Facebook, but everyone came to know about it very quickly. And the entire kingdom, they just hated Kaikeyi. Then we see Bharata. Bharat returns, he is mad at her as well. Now what is the reaction with Rama? Interestingly, Rama was very happy at the whole thing, the way this whole thing had turned. The reason was this. Although Dasharatha thought that nobody knew about the promise he had made to Kaikeyi's parents, Rama actually knew. Well, Rama is the Lord himself, there is nothing hidden from him. He knew exactly. And he knew that by choosing to make Rama the king, his father Dasharatha was actually breaking the promise he had made, was not holding true to his word. Now, today, in the 21st century, child, son or daughter can easily go and tell the parents, you're wrong, you shouldn't be doing this. But this was way long back, and it was not customary for children to go and tell their parents that they are doing something wrong. And so Rama was very unhappy, but didn't exactly go and tell Dasharatha that he shouldn't do it. And so the way things turned out, he was happy that finally Dasharatha was forced to keep his word. Also, Rama was not happy with the tradition itself that the eldest in the family should be the king. He said that seemed unfair. Normally, we have the best thing reserved for the youngest in the family. So Rama said that if there should be any tradition at all about this, the youngest should be the king. And he was very happy therefore that Bharat, whom he loved so much, would be the king. A third reason Rama was happy is that he had for long had this great desire to go and spend time in forest, to be with the rishis and sages and spend time with them. And as the prince designate, the king designate, there was no chance he would ever have to go and spend long time in the forest because of the duties, the administrative responsibilities he would have in the kingdom of Ayodhya. And therefore now here's the chance. 14 years he could go and stay in the forest. So all of this, from Rama's standpoint, he was very happy. So he goes and bows down at the feet of Kaikeyi and says, Mother, he doesn't say thank you, but that's more or less what he says, that I'm very grateful that you did this. The moment Rama addresses Kaikeyi as mother, now by this time her mind is so poisoned. She's seeing conspiracy and suspicion. She's been suspecting everything. So when Rama says mother, and then Kaikeyi said, oh, now you think you address me as mother, and you think my heart will melt, and I will change my decision? I'm not going to do that. You still will have to go to the forest. That's the kind of thoughts going on in Kaikeyi's mind. But what Rama was doing was not anything unusual. He had always addressed her as mother. In fact, what Rama seemed to be saying at this moment is that you are my real mother. Even more of my mother than Kaushalya is. Because Kaushalya was rejoicing when Rama was about to be coronated as king. But what Rama is saying is, just as a mother, you see, when a little baby cries, most people don't know what the baby wants. But the mother knows exactly whether it's time to sleep or it's time to drink milk or whatever. So the mother exactly knows what the baby wants. And so what Rama was saying is, Kaikeyi, you are my real mother because you could see the desire of my heart to go and spend time in the forest. And you made it possible. So when Rama addressed her as mother, he was really coming from his own heart. But that's not how Kaikeyi saw it. Now, from Kaikeyi's standpoint, you see what had happened. She thought that as a mother, she was doing her duty out of her love for her son. To protect the interests of her son, she did just the opposite. You see what happened? First of all, she lost her place in history. Today, when we think of Kaikeyi, we don't think of a brave, beautiful, wonderful, all-loved princess. We don't think of her. We think as a villain. She is the villain in the story of Ramayana. So she lost her place in history. She lost her husband. She became a widow. As a cause of her action, Dasharatha died. She lost the love of the kingdom, of all the people. People who loved her hated her. Her own son, when Bharat returns and finds out what his mother has done, if you read some of these Ramayana versions, he uses, it can be heartbreaking, the kind of things he says to his mother. And he said, I will never again address you as mother in my whole life. And he never did. So what could be more devastating for a mother other than a child coming and saying, I don't consider you my mother. I will never address you as my mother. So this one misstep, because of attachment, not because of love. She thought it was love, it was attachment, that she brought so much pain and suffering all around. There is this one little incident which is also very instructive. When Lakshmana, in fact before we go to Lakshmana, there is this story of Sita, and Sita goes and tells Rama that, oh, I'll come with you to the forest. And according to the requirement, she didn't have to go. Only Rama was told to go for 14 years. And when Sita says, and then we read in most versions of Ramayana, Rama says that, oh no, you're not used to the forest life. You're not used to the forest life. And so you stay here and I'll return after 14 years. And so on. Now in one version of Ramayana, Sita in fact says, Sita herself asks Rama, in which Ramayana is it written that Rama goes alone to the forest and Sita stays back? And Tulsidas then in one place mentions, says that Rama Avatara has not occurred just once. In every kalpa, every cycle, Rama Avatara comes. In any case, so Sita decides to accompany Rama, and Lakshman, who is so devoted to Rama, he decides to go as well. Now, again, customary, he felt his father is already dead. I need to go and tell my mother that I have chosen to accompany Rama to the forest. And in his mind, sometimes when you have to go and speak with someone and you are anticipating some objections, you kind of have a mental conversation going on. And so he then says, this is what I'm going to tell my mother, and then my mother is going to object, mother is going to say no, and then I'm going to say this, and this is what she's going to say, and so on. And so he goes to Sumitra, and Lakshmana says, I have decided now to go with Rama to the forest. And completely opposite to what he was thinking, Sumitra doesn't stop him at all. In fact, she is very happy that he has taken that decision. And then there is one beautiful verse in the Valmiki Ramayana. Sumitra tells Rama, Ramam Dasharatham Vidhi, Mam Vidhi Janakatmajam, Ayodhyam Atavim Vidhi, Gachatata Yatha Sukham. The beautiful verse. What Sumitra says is this: Ramam Dasharatham Vidhi. Look upon Rama as Dasharatha, as father. See, until this point, you are looking upon Dasharatha as your father. Know that Rama is your father. Mam Vidhi Janakatmajam. You saw me as your mother, but know that Sita is your mother. So look upon Rama as your father. Look upon Sita as your mother. Ayodhyam Atavi Vidhi. Look upon the forest. Atavi means forest. Look upon the forest as Ayodhya. Until this point, Ayodhya was your home. Now, the forest is your home. Look upon that. Gachatata. Go child, yatha sukham, with joy in your heart. Very interesting. What she is saying is this. Where is Ayodhya? We might think of Ayodhya as a place, as a physical place. But what Sumitra is saying is, wherever Rama is, there that is Ayodhya. Until this point, Rama was here, that is why this is Ayodhya. Now Rama is going to the forest. Now forest has become the Ayodhya. And what is a forest? A forest is where these wild animals with violent tendencies live. And now this Ayodhya, which is filled with people, ambitious, people who are having their selfish desires. So Ayodhya has now become filled with these kind of tendencies. So Ayodhya has become the forest. And since Rama is in the forest has now become the real Ayodhya. It's wonderful. It has a lesson for all of us. That no matter where we are, if we look upon God as our Father, the Divine Mother as our Mother, and wherever we are, if there is God within our heart, then that is our home. In fact, this kind of a question comes often even in the minds of many immigrants. Now, as Maharaj mentioned, I've been outside India for the last 17 years. And so this is the question, which is my home? I do visit here almost every alternate year. And so it's not unusual to feel, oh, I'm so far away from India, my home, and I'm all alone in this materialistic West, and away from home, it's easy to feel sad and depressed, and many immigrants do feel that kind of a sense of isolation, a sense of being cut off. But here we find a clue that if there is the divine being in our heart, which is our home is where the mother and father are, and God is our father and mother. So if we dwell in the presence of God, if we remember that God is always with us, then wherever we are, that can be our home. So we need to rise beyond the concept of home as a physical space to a spiritual space. So we can be at home wherever we are, provided we live in the presence of God. That's the idea, and that's exactly what even Bharat says. When Bharat returns and he refuses to be the king, they often quote the scriptures to him. They said, but the scriptures say, Matra Devo Bhava, Pitra Devo Bhava. Look upon your father as your God, look upon mother as God. And this is the wishes of your parents. You have to obey them. And Bharat says, of course, but the scripture says true. I have to obey my parents. But who is my father? Who is my mother? Is Dashrata, is he my father? Is Kaikeyi, is she my mother? In every birth, I've had a set of parents. The parents that we have now are not the parents that we have had in every life. There's only one constant, unchanging set of parents that we have, and that is God. And that's why we chant, Tvameva Mata Pita Tvameva. It's not to deny the presence and the importance and the value of our biological parents, but to recognize, to see beyond them. We need to honor and love and respect our biological parents, seeing them as embodiment of the divine. But if you're not able to see the divine in them, then it is not so much fun. Once someone asked, actually to Hajra Moshai, who was once told Sri Ramakrishna, you are only after this all the time saying, Narendra, all these young people, and instead of you forgetting God and just getting attached to all these youngsters here, what will happen to you? And then Sri Ramakrishna said, he said, I love Narendra because I see Narayana in him. On the day if I am not able to see Narayana in him, I won't be able to even look at his face. So that is love. That you love someone not as the person, but it's because you see the presence of God in that person. So that's how our love towards our parents, love towards our elders, love towards our teachers should be. That we are able to see the presence of God. Because ultimately, God alone is our unchanging eternal parent. Awareness of this gives so much strength, so much fearlessness in our hearts. And that is what Sumitra, this was the great teaching. Sumitra, throughout the story in the Ramayana, Sumitra doesn't really speak all that much. There are very few words. She's a great Jnani. You can see that with these very few statements she makes, profound significance. And so this is one small little teaching she gave Lakshmana, which is so useful for all of us. So Rama goes to forest. We know, of course, Bharat refuses to become the king. There's another one story. I'm sure many of you are familiar, but it's worth remembering it. And that is, we read that when Bharat is on his way to the forest, determined to bring Rama back and persuade him to be the king, we read that after reaching some point, he hears that this is the place where Rama and Lakshmana removed all their princely garments. They put on the dress of hermits and they walked barefoot beyond that point. And Bharata did exactly that. So he also removes all his princely things and starts going barefoot. After going some distance, he starts crying. He starts in great agony and pain and crying. And then someone says, what happened? And then you find that lots of thorns are into his feet. And then others around thought that, oh, this poor prince is not this poor prince who is not used to this very hard life in the forest, and so they help remove the thorn. But actually, Bharata is not crying because the thorn went to his own feet. He is crying because he said, this is the path that Rama took, and how much pain Rama must have experienced, and all because of the actions of my mother. So he takes the blame that because of me, Rama had to suffer, and that's really what pains his heart all the more. And then we read again, then he goes further, and then after going some distance, the road is perfectly clear, not a single thorn on the way. And Bharata cries even more after that. Someone said, what's wrong now? And then Bharata says, Rama, who is all-knowing, he knew that I would be following him. So he had cleared all this road of thorns so that I shouldn't be hurt. This is how a bhakta thinks. This is how a devotee thinks. And Bharata is the embodiment of a bhakta, of a devotee. If you want to know how I can be a good devotee, what are the kind of qualities I need to become a real lover of God, study the life of Bharata. You will see everything. If you just follow his example, all the quality necessary to be a bhakta will enter into you. And then of course we read that he goes and then Rama says no, and then he uses his, takes his padukas back and so on. So we know how the story goes beyond that point. We see that at the end of the 14 years, when Rama returns, in the Pushpaka Airlines, if you like. So all these people had gathered on this huge grounds in Ayodhya. And among all the people who were gathered, his own mother, Kausalya was there, Sumitra was there. The first person Rama goes to is Kaikeyi. He has not forgotten that it is because of her that he had this chance to go and stay in the forest for 14 years and spend time in the company of these great sages. By that time, Kaikeyi has understood her folly. She seeks forgiveness from Rama. And Rama assures her, he said, you have not done anything wrong. But finally there is a redemption of some kind for Kaikeyi because she understood her mistake. But just look at it, how much. I mean, of course, you could say that if she hadn't done it, then the Ramayana would have ended rather quickly. It wouldn't have been as interesting a story either. So in some ways she made Ramayana an interesting story, that's true. But how much pain, how much suffering was the result, as a result of her attachment. Again, something that she thought she was doing out of love for her son, something that she felt would help her son, in fact brought pain and suffering all around. These are just two examples of two mothers in the well-known epics. Most of us, we know about our tradition. Very few of us really go to the Vedas. We kind of invoke the Vedas quite often, but very few of us have read them. Some of us may have read a little bit of the Upanishads, a little bit of the Gita, but for the majority of our people, our knowledge about our religion, about our tradition, about our culture comes from these stories of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. And it is from them that we learn. We learn both. It's not just that we should read the lives of great saints. Of course, that's very helpful. But it's also important to read the lives or the life stories of someone like Kaikeyi, someone like even Manthara, or someone like Gandhari. In Tulsidasa's book, in the beginning, we find him bowing down to all the good people in the world and to all the wicked people in the world. And someone asked Tulsidas, we can understand bowing down to good people. Why do you want to bow down to wicked people? And then Tulsidas says, they are both my teachers. By looking upon good people, I learn how I should live. By looking at wicked people, I learn how I should not live. So I'm learning from both of them. And that's what we can do. There's no need to get upset if we find people around us who are irritating or who are not up to what we think is our standard. And what we can do is just look and learn. That is what Sri Ramakrishna meant when he said, so long as I live, I learn. Swami Vivekananda used to say, learning is religion. Josephine MacLeod, she said of Vivekananda that every day he learned something new. And that's what we can do. At the end of the day, ask yourself, have I learned anything new today? It doesn't have to be some terribly big thing to learn. Even if it's a tiny little thing, something which might seem insignificant, but something new that you have learned, then that day is not wasted. But if at the end of the day you find, oh, today whole day has gone, I haven't learned anything at all, then that day is truly wasted. So we have so much to learn. And most of our learning comes not so much from books, most of our learning comes from life itself. In fact, you will see, books are good. Read books by all means. But simply reading books is not enough. That's why the word that is used in our books is swadhyaya, not simply adhyaya. Adhyaya is study. But swadhyaya, swa, self. When does adhyaya become a swadhyaya? When does study become self-study? Now self-study doesn't mean studying by yourself, of course. Everyone is studying by themselves. But what it means is applying what you study to yourself. So don't read too much at a time. Many of our Swamis of the Ramakrishna order, they often recommend that you read a page of the Gospel or the Kathamrita every day. Again, no need to read 50 pages at a time. Even if you read a single page or a couple of pages, what's important is you read, then you pause, then you stop, and then see, connect that what you have read to your own life and see, beginning tomorrow morning, how can I put this into practice? Be very specific, sometimes we kind of get so abstract, oh, this should be done, we have to be detached, and it's of course, that's great, but then sometimes we just remain as good hopes or good ideas. We want things to become more concrete. So what if I say, oh, I need to be truthful or I need to be loving, I need to kind of make that teaching a little bit more concrete. That how do I then express that in my daily life? Now, not everything that we read might be immediately relevant. It doesn't have to be. So don't think that every word that you read in the books of Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, Swamiji, everything should be relevant right now. Quite possibly, many of the things might seem not really relevant to you at this stage of time. Fine, that's fine. You can just read it, and maybe, who knows, maybe 5 years later or 10 years later, suddenly some teachings, oh, I had read it then, and now it makes sense. So, everything doesn't have to be relevant, but read, find what is relevant to you now in your present stage and try to practice it. Because ultimately, what will protect us, what will transform our life is not how many books you have read, how many lectures you have attended, or how many retreats you have gone to. What will really transform your life is what you have actually done about it. Long back when I joined the order in our center in Bombay, one of my first duties was to be in the bookstore. And there was this one middle-aged man who used to come, and he would buy a lot of books every Sunday. And after a few Sundays I became a little curious that the same person coming buying books and books and so once I asked him, I said, do you really read all the books that you buy from here? And then he was very honest. He said, in the beginning when I was buying these books, I bought them with the intention of reading. Now I think in this life I'll just buy books, I'll read them in the next life. So again, no need to have too many books. If you have books, read them. Don't get another one until you finish the first. I'll tell you actually, this is what actually happened. This one young man came, again, the same bookstore in Bombay when I was there, way back in the 70s. And so he wanted to buy the complete works of Swami Tyagananda. And of course, I would have been happy to sell him a set. There's more sale, it's good. But I said, I told him, he seemed to be a very honest young man. And I said, oftentimes people buy these entire sets and they just go and then just put it on the shelf and it just remains there. So if you really want to read, why don't you buy volume by volume. Just buy the first volume. And I said, are you a fast reader? He said, yes. I said, okay, you come next month. Take this first volume, finish it, read it within this month. Come next month and buy a second volume. In this way, if you do, you will really read what you have taken. So he said, okay. So he took the first volume. And afterwards, I was telling the other Swamis later on, I said, oh, here is this one young man who came, and this is what I suggested. And then they were joking with me and saying, oh, you just missed a customer, you should have sold him the whole set. And so we never really expected that we'll ever see him again. But indeed, exactly a month later, he came and asked for a second volume. So that was kind of quite a bit of surprise. I gave him the second volume. He goes, a month later, came asked for a third volume. I gave him a third volume. A month later, he comes and says, I want to join the order. So he didn't even have to wait to finish the entire set. He did join the order, and he is now one of our very senior Swamis of the order, holding a very, very responsible position. I just mentioned just one example to show that it's no need to read a whole lot, but be judicious about what you read in the kind of books you choose. But whatever you read, especially in spiritual books, apply to your life. Only whatever transformations that occur within us, only those that will remain with us. And one of the challenges, as I said in the beginning, is to distinguish between love and attachment. Love is what we all want. Attachment is what we need to get rid of. It might seem contradictory, but only those who are really detached can truly love. So let's hope and pray that through the infinite grace of Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother and Swamiji, we might be able to reduce the attachments from our lives one by one and increase in the true love in our own life. The two distinguishing characteristics are that love is about the other person and attachment is primarily about the self. So what we need to see is first, how much of the decisions I make involve my self-interest first than the interest of the person I think I love. That is one way to know the distinction between love and attachment. And a second way, of course, is by the result. Because love will always lead to freedom, to joy, to contentment, to fulfillment. And if any kind of a relationship produces anger or frustration or stress or anxiety, we can see there is a tinge of attachment. So through the results any relationship produces, it's also possible to distinguish. It's a fine line, I mean it's not so black and white. So only through a trial and error we need to find out that I don't imagine that it's most of the relationships really are a mixture. There is a little bit of attachment involved, and if we can kind of consciously try, and it's a trial and error thing, consciously try to remove attachment as much as possible, we'll find that our love is becoming greater and producing joy both to myself and to my son or daughter. Again, see, I just want to make one kind of a general statement. See, every one of us, we have to figure out for ourselves. So, I mean, you can give me these case studies, whether it's a love or attachment, but I'm not here like sitting in some like a judgment about love or attachment. I think we have to figure out from our own lives. Sometimes we will get it right, sometimes we may not get it right. Through trial and error, we have to figure out. So I think that's a challenge. So it's something so internal that every one of us has to do this process themselves. We have to take some hard decisions, which might externally appear as heartless, but that might be a way of really expressing love. So you really have to take some hard decisions at some point. Thank you for sharing. I don't think we need to generate any love at all. The thing is this: we don't even have to be loving. The love is our very nature. All that we need to do is remove hatred from your heart, and love will automatically manifest yourself. The thing is sometimes people try to become loving and end up putting one more mask We already have lots of masks. In addition, say I am a mask of a loving person. So don't try to become loving at all. Just remove all hatred from your heart. Love will automatically manifest yourself. Don't try to become unselfish. Remove selfishness from your heart. Unselfishness will automatically come. So don't try to become anything. The problem is we already become a lot of things. Now it's like unbecoming. So remove hatred, remove selfishness, and love, and everything else. Everything that is good that's already within us. It's not flying about in the air and we have to kind of catch hold of it and put it inside. It's already here. It's being obstructed by hatred and all the negativities within us. The more I am able to eliminate that, love and everything will automatically come out. That's what we need to do. So thank you very much.